How are y'all doing? All right, what's going on? How are y'all doing? Today is September 27th, Wednesday. As right now, every Wednesday on LinkedIn, we go live as well. And, and want to share red flags, things, essentially things you need to know to avoid possible problems. Now, of course, in a live show like this, it's just not enough time to talk about all of them, but I can share some of the common ones with y'all. Welcome to Green Card Guys TV. I'm your host, John Ting. We practice immigration law in all 50 states of America, helping you solve your immigration problem and maybe preventing it from happening in the first place. Okay. Because the ultimate goal is to help you or the company obtain a visa, temporary work visa, or for residency and avoid those problems, avoid those delays if possible. Now, I do offer a strategy session. You might not know this already, but we do offer it for 15 minutes at no cost to you. But you got to do a couple things. All right. We do have that we ask you to do, and that is to give us a call or go to our website, greencardguys.com, or even the one right above here. Okay. You can take advantage of that because it helps our team to review the information, type of job, the current situation may be the candidate, the employee as OPT, temporary work visa, or work status, I guess say, work permit, not necessarily visa, right after graduating. So there's a lot of tips related to it that you need to know because some people think, oh, eh, everyone has a different mindset. And I really hope to convey to you that for you to have the mindset of being prepared. So, for example, we had a consultation. We almost have a consultation every day, similarly related to this throughout the year. It's like, well, what can I do now to prepare for the future? But some people wait too late, essentially, right? So, I just had a consultation today where the person has the student about to graduate end of this December and needs to, fortunately, has 12 months of OPT that person can apply for. But I conveyed that there's number one, only 30 days. There's a 30-day deadline to file for the OPT work permit. Because you miss that deadline, then you miss out on OPT completely. Unfortunately, it's a it's a crapshoot in that sense. There's a very limited exception. Maybe you could argue nunc pro tunc, maybe a late filing, but that's very discretionary. So you really want to plan ahead. And the second thing, in terms of a tip for students or people who have graduated and now on OPT, is that I know it's very common to think like, oh, no company is going to sponsor me. But in fact, a lot of companies sponsor, just not maybe not the ones you already spoke with, right? So keep searching. In this particular person scenario, it's end of September. So I got a couple months before graduation, before having to apply for the OPT. So you want to try keep searching. Okay, build your LinkedIn profile because employers, HR, recruiters, they're all looking at the LinkedIn profile. That is a number one place to go, other than Google searching, which you got to keep in mind of that as well. What you have online about yourself. Which, by the way, all your social media profile links and whatnot profiles, maybe a good idea to keep it to private. Okay, especially with talks about politics, your political views, things like that. Now, be who you are, of course, but look, if you're trying to get legal status, you might not want to be sharing your political views if you're trying to get a job. All right, so now the third tip here is really for both sides, employers and employees, is that let's say the person is graduating, supposed to graduate in May. You don't have to wait, okay, because the registration is in March. So there's a couple months before graduating. So I know it seems weird to try to get a company to sponsor you and register you for H-1B. It's basically still a lottery. They just don't call it lottery. It's a random selection, they claim. So you don't want to wait until after you literally walk the stage for graduation and then say, "Oh, I want to get registered for H-1B." Well, then you just lost out on that. That was just 2 months before, right? So because registration is only one time a year, and that is in March. I know it sucks, There could be a second round, like this past year, this past fiscal year. There was a second round for H-1B selections, but that's not guaranteed every year. But even when there's a second round of selections, you can only register one time a year, and that is in March. And there's a temporary work visa. So a lot of people, you might think, well, can I qualify for that? There's a lot of requirements, but the most common one is that you need to have a bachelor's degree. Okay, you need to have a bachelor's degree. So just keep that in mind, or you need to have a degree, and that degree needs to be related to your job. All right, so just keep that in mind. It needs to be related to your job. So if you got a psychology degree, but then doing, I don't know, something related to a business, but not related to psychology at all, that's not going to work. So you just need to keep that in mind. I do see some questions. Thank you so much for your trust for allowing me to answer your questions. But just trying to think through some of the concerns here. Another one that people are not aware of because it's not distinctly on any government website, you may have to search for it, but it's a 50% rule. So if you're going to be sponsored for residency for EB, really got to think about the 50% rule. And that is, let's say, because most people, when they contact us, that foreign national, the immigrant or international student, for example, they've been working for that company that wants to sponsor them, which makes sense because companies want to get some trust from you, or they want to be able to trust you to be willing to say, okay, I'm going to sponsor you, right? So, work ethic, things like that, etc. But when that happens, then you may want to consider one of two things. Whatever position you're in now, let's say it's like I guess you can say like junior level or regular level, then the next position you're going to be sponsored for might have to be like an upgrade per se, like a higher title. Okay. And the rule, this 50% rule. So let's say the job description requires a 2 years experience, and the candidate does have the 2 years experience, but more than 50% of those 2 years, so more than 1 year of that experience, is with the same company to sponsor you, then that's not going to work. And the government is not going to stop your process of your application. That issue won't come up until much later. Okay. So many steps down the line, it could be like a year later, then the USCIS will say, by the way, this is not going to work out. So that would be a waste of time for everyone. So again, this is a common thing that most people don't talk about. So that's why I want to bring that up. Again, there's a lot more tips I can share with you and whatnot, but here I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and, because there's a lot of questions not always related to employment, I'm going to go ahead and get off of LinkedIn. But anyway, those y'all on LinkedIn, you might not know this, but you can give us a call right up there and answer your questions, okay? Schedule that strategy session. All right, so I'm just getting off LinkedIn now. Now we're on YouTube. Okay, we're on YouTube and TikTok. So I see a question on TikTok real quick. Ryan, writ of mandamus, how long will it take to present it to before a judge? EB 345 is in Chicago. It doesn't very few, I don't say very few times will it need to go to a judge. And that is only requires a judge if the U.S. attorney who represents the government is, I guess you could say contesting, I wouldn't say combating, but contesting the ability to get that status, all right, or to move it along to the next step of the case. So it doesn't always require a judge to sign an order, but it could come to that point. All right. Let's see here. Emily, you mentioned on YouTube. Yeah, a lot has been happening recently, recently with immigration. You really seem to be in touch with more information. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, appreciate you sharing that information. I'll have to record about that separately, but I'm going to answer some questions right now. But I'll answer your other one, what I think about possible government shutdown. Yeah, it's stupid. You would think that the both sides can get it together. Fortunately, I believe the deadline is sometime in December. I could be wrong, Um, but every time I remember when the government shut down, it usually happens in December because they couldn't figure it out. You know what? I think it's before then. I'm pretty sure it's before then, because we're now in a new fiscal year for the government. It starts every, or we're about to, it starts every October 1st. But usually they have some kind of, they agree to something on a temporary basis. I don't know, like usually every one month they revisit or something, so they can get in everything they need in terms of the budget line item. But when that happens, related to immigration, it's ridiculous. It slows down the process for everyone. Fortunately, though, I mean, more so delays on immigration court because they just can't operate because the government pays the judges, pays the staff of the courts, so it just can't move on. But with USCIS, most of the departments within USCIS can still continue because USCIS is funded by you as the applicant, not by Congress. So therefore, meaning the money is not tied up with the government. I know it's a little strange, but they can continue in that sense. But on the flip side, with the Department of State, from what I understand, that can be shut down. So I could be wrong, but I can check on that. But possibility, I guess, more specific to your question, I don't know. I have been following politics in that sense in some time in general, so I have to take a look into it. But whatever I think, honestly, doesn't matter. I have no influence in Congress, unfortunately. Let's see. Hope y'all feeling okay. I've been traveling a little bit, so hopefully I didn't get COVID. Or my kids are in school now. Maybe it's through that. Hope you guys are doing well. Maria Garcia on YouTube asks, "How long do they usually to look at green card after on marriage green card?" There's no set time, fortunately, because someone that could be approved for work permit, temporary work permit, could have been early on in the case. Let's say like after 4 months after filing, but then the green card interview, if there's an interview, could be a year later minimum. If there's going to be an interview, usually it's a year later. Okay, so there's no set timing in between necessarily. I know it's kind of strange, but it's two different tracks. It used to be where it's just all one straight pathway. They don't do that anymore. Apparently, they keep it two separate tracks, so it doesn't delay the issuance or the mailing of the work permit. All right, let me head over to TikTok here. Sorry, Maria. Thanks for pinning some comments. Someone, Sakar says perm certification too slow. Yeah, we've noticed that at least our average timing from Department of Labor is about 8 months. So it's really stupid. I don't know how they do it internally, but I feel like it's one of those that should be rubber stamped. I mean, at least prevailing wage determination, step number one, definitely should be way more ability to rubber stamp. Like, I hate to say it, but it's like someone should just be dedicated to these cases. It feels like no one is dedicated to these cases because it takes us so long. And I think it's just intentional, unfortunately. Life 024. Will you have an issue for U.S. citizenship later on if you quit your sponsor after 3 months of having GC? We get this question quite often. Unfortunately, I can't tell you. I don't know the answer to that. Sometimes we know answers to things because it's like directly stated on the USCIS policy manual, or someone has sued, and so there's case law on it, or there's not just case law, but maybe someone has not received a favorable decision through court, so we can rely on that. But unfortunately, or I guess for better or worse, I don't believe I've seen a case law related to that. So as long as it was bona fide job offer and that you intended to work for that employer, then you're good to go. So, but yeah, if somehow you were sued by the government or something, then you have to testify about that, right? So I think you can read between the lines, hopefully, on the decision to make for yourself, and that's good for you if you're able to find another job. All right, Sarah, they have to approve your VAWA case before getting work permit? No. Well, it depends if you filed the 485 already. Let me see another comment here. I wish TikTok was easy to just click on this and see the full comment. Okay, you did file the 485. So no, it doesn't necessarily have to wait for the VAWA, the I-360 to be approved. Um, let's see. I think I saw some congrats to Shane. Oh, there you go. I want to pin this comment from Shane. USCS just approved your letter for I-130. Congratulations. So I'm just inferring that your family member or spouse is outside the United States. The next thing to expect is a welcome email from the National Visa Center that contains a new case number with invoice number so you can pay those fees. That's the next step, assuming your family member's abroad. All right, Harshilp. Will RFE 485 on the 45 affect your EAD? Not necessarily, but because it's supposed to be, from what I understand, two different tracks. Um, is that what you mean? Is the RFE based on the 485? It might depend what they're asking for, but usually it's not related to the EAD and shouldn't affect it. Okay. And plus, it's two separate applications technically. Alrighty. Jimmy, criminal questions. Can't really answer that on YouTube. I wish I could, but yeah, that's not looking good for you. So yeah, because typically there is a inadmissibility related to certain crimes within 5 years of getting the green card. So that's not looking good. For us, Jimmy, we do charge for that consequences, to share consequences, to look more into detail for that. But yeah, I can tell you my gut is already like, it's not good for you. All right. But you do need to speak to a lawyer 101 about your situation. Okay. You said charges. So maybe it's not a conviction, not a plea bargain. So hopefully you haven't agreed to a plea deal, which, by the way, folks, if you're not a US citizen, well, I really think even if you are a US citizen, you really need to consult with a criminal defense lawyer, because and immigration lawyer at the same time. I guess if you're not a U.S. citizen, but if you're an immigrant or you have resident status, you really need to consult with two types of lawyers: a criminal defense lawyer and an immigration lawyer. Now, I know there are some that do both. I don't know how that's possible. It is possible, but that just seems difficult to me, because yeah, it's just a lot to know, a lot to keep track with. And just like Emily on YouTube, you understand that there's a lot going on with just immigration alone. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, because a criminal defense lawyer is not going to understand completely the consequences of agreeing to a plea deal, the consequences of immigration. Okay, so yeah, we do have our own network of criminal defense lawyers that they, essentially consult with us, and vice versa, so it can help people out, right, with their status at the end of the day. And that is because even if you're able to get, when you do probation, do a plea deal, there's have terms and conditions of the probation, and you complete it successfully, right? Great. but then you get a dismissal order of that crime. It appears good. It's good for a U.S. citizen, but for an immigrant, even with someone who has resident status, that's not the best case scenario. If you want the best case scenario, it's a straight dismissal. Okay, so it is confusing for people, because usually a criminal defense lawyer is like, hey, good news, your case got dismissed, you completed your probation. But the immigration law says if you agree to a plea deal, that is you agreeing to the crime, that you have done it, even if you didn't actually do it. So that's why, I need to record a separate video about that, because a lot of people are kicking themselves because they're like, oh dang, I should have talked to immigration lawyer. Can't turn back the clock on that one. Okay, it's unfortunate. Anu, is COVID back? Not that I'm aware of, but I mean, I'm thinking it's lurking around. I know a lot of people have long COVID, people call it. So yeah, just be aware of that. I don't think it's gone. I think it's here to stay, according to doctors. I just don't think it's like active, prevalent right now, but it's gonna stay. I think the COVID vaccine is gonna stay. Gonna need it. I don't think that's going away. As I know, a lot of people don't want to take the COVID-19 vaccine, but I think it's here to stay. and hopefully be improved. Anu asks, is ACD a dismissal in immigration? I've heard of the term ACD, but I just can't remember what exactly that is because I don't practice criminal defense. I think it's maybe something related to alternative conditions from detention, something like that. That possibly can be considered like a quasi straight dismissal, but again, that also depends on the state. All right, thanks for those questions on YouTube. Let me switch over to TikTok. Thanks, Maria. All right, got some great questions. Thanks so much. By the way, if you're just now joining the show, welcome. We do offer a strategy session for 15 minutes at no cost to you. However, keep in mind, not everyone qualifies. There is no entitlement to the free 15 minutes, but we want to offer the opportunity. And that is because sometimes our CARES team, who are not lawyers, they're not licensed lawyers, but they may sound like one because we train them a lot, almost like every day. But you can ask legal questions, but they just can't answer those legal questions. So just reserve that for the attorneys when you have that strategy session with us. But they'll ask you some questions to see if they can point you in the right direction. Because for some people, for example, have something called, they've been outside the U.S. for too long, unfortunately, and they have resident status, but we do have a free guide for that. We have a free guide about many different scenarios to kind of point you in the right direction. So, but it'll be our pleasure to assist you, okay, if you have questions about your situation. Okay, Dwayne, what happened if they cancel you sent evidence for your case? I don't know exactly what you mean by cancel, but I'm assuming you mean that it was your application was denied. Is that what you mean, Dwayne? And if so, then that means that your evidence was not sufficient. So if it was an application with USCIS, the standard is preponderance of evidence. So I'm not trying to give y'all a hard time, but I do need to give y'all a hard time, I guess, because preponderance of the evidence standard is the lowest standard, meaning it's more likely to be true, for example, that you're in a marriage that's bona fide, that's legitimate, genuine, right? Not married for immigration benefit. So, and plenty of people, unfortunately, get denied, right? Because maybe you don't know exactly what to provide as evidence. And even if you do provide joint bank account, you might think, well, I gave USCIS a joint bank account. But when our team at Ting Law Group takes a closer look and we see only, like, for example, 5 transaction activities on the bank statement, look, we already know if I were a USCIS officer, I'm like, yo, that's not good enough. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, why only 5? Is that your main account? So I would ask more questions like, okay, how many different accounts do you use? Which accounts do you actually use for your bills? Right? So in a short time frame of an interview, which is average 15, 30 minutes, you might not have enough time to explain your situation. So that's why we tell our clients, the shorter your interview is actually the best, right? Because that means that evidence is clear cut. So the officer does not have to ask that many questions. All right. So when they do ask questions, it's really questions about on the form, right? That there is no question without a doubt, essentially, that you're in a marriage bona fide, it's legitimate. So some people who would get denied is because you got some inadequate evidence, essentially. You might think it's adequate, but it might not be. So if you were wanting to consult with us, we would need a copy of your denial letter so that we can understand why you were exactly denied. Unfortunately, some people don't receive a very specific denial reason. How long does it take for an unaccompanied minor to get approved for asylum? No idea. First of all, it has to be a credible claim. All right. If you're asking, well, how soon will USCIS interview the unaccompanied minor? I think that's the real question. Is it really, because we have some clients where we have to file a lawsuit. Okay. I'm sorry. When I say real, I mean more pinpointed question. Some people have been waiting like 7 years. Someone yesterday mentioned they're still waiting for an interview for 10 years. That's a hell of a long time, folks. So no person should need to wait even 2 years, I think, with the current situation with immigration. So throughout the past 2 years or so, they have been trying to change the process to make it a little faster. But look, there's like thousands of people who applied for asylum. So regardless of how they change the process, it's likely going to take any person, not just an unaccompanied minor. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they might have a specific provision for unaccompanied minors to conduct the asylum interview sooner. But my gut in general is it's going to take a hell of a long time. So, folks, by the way, so with related to asylum, when we file a lawsuit on that for delay of asylum interview, we put in as part of our stipulation, basically an agreement that, okay, it's going to have an interview. And then within 90 days or within 120 days after the interview, my client is going to receive the decision. Because at the end, we still don't want to wait around for decision, because we've actually sued for that too. That USCIS already conducted the interview, and that could have been like 2 years before. No person should wait 2 years for a decision on anything, right? If anything, it really should be like 2 weeks. 2 weeks already seems like a long time for me, right? A long time for y'all. So, but 2 weeks is not long enough for a lawsuit. All right, so that hopefully it gives you an idea. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that's the comment I was looking for. Thanks, Maria. What can I do from Mikey? What can I do if your app was rejected because of visa availability of visa F2A and app dated 2nd September? It sounds like what you may have done was file 485. You can't do that. Maybe by the time you did, yeah, because when you filed in September, those are things that y'all wouldn't know, right? Because if you don't understand the government process, immigration process, and also the government structure, their fiscal year restarts every October 1st. And the thing is, related to the fiscal year, the Congress has set in stone, in law, from like, I think it was 1950s when JFK, is that the 50s? When JFK was president, they set limitations on the visa. So this, if you ever wonder about wait times, why is the wait time so long for, let's say, like F2A or sponsored by sibling compared to like married to a U.S. citizen spouse? There's a reason. There's visa limitations. So if you heard of the phrase retrogression, things like that, it tends to retrogress when it's closer to the end of the fiscal year. So anyway, hopefully that helps. But the other thing is that even if you file, let's say like October bulletin, maybe it might show current for you, okay? For Mikey, that you still have to show that you maintain your status in America. Because it sounds like I'm inferring that you filed a 485 application. So this is one of those situations, Mikey, you want to schedule a strategy session. It's a lot more conversation to answer. Okay, and I need more information as well. I mean, I have a pretty good idea of your situation. Let's see. Maze. You have 40 credits. You're going to apply for you have your husband apply for you, your citizen husband. Oh, shoot. Where did it go? Yeah, Mikey. So even the bulletin moves for October for F2A or maybe like November, yeah, you're going to have that issue, unfortunately, about maintaining status. So if you don't have non-immigrant status right now, and I don't count B1, B2, because you can't assume that 485 will be processed within like the duration of your B1, B2. Some people have asked me that. It's just likely not going to happen. 485 application, when it's not related to, anyway, it's just in general, family preference cases usually take longer to go through the process for decision. Can you file to extend your stay with 539? You could try, but I mean, it's pretty, even the whole reasoning of COVID, pandemic, that stuff doesn't work anymore because I know people got lucky with that before, but it's post pandemic now. I mean, technically, COVID is out there somewhere, but it's not a pandemic anymore. So I don't know what you have to have some pretty solid reasoning on why you want to extend your status. And I'm going to tell you now, if you're going to put the reasoning of like, oh, I'm filing at 45, no, that's not going to cut it. All right. Moiletas, your son is in deployment. Thank you for your son's service. I really appreciate it. Can they still apply for parent? Yes. And so the first thing that comes to mind when adult child is in the military, or it could be a spouse, other relationship, is that we could qualify for military parole in place. Okay, military parole in place, PIP. That first is filed with the local field office with USCIS as step number one. Typically, doesn't have to be, but unfortunately, there is no processing time when it comes down to military parole in place. All right, but yeah, your son can file for you in general. And the purpose of military parole in place, not many people know about this, is that yeah, if you do have a family member, nucleus family member in the military or even reserves, it only really benefits a person when that person is entered America without a visa, without being inspected and admitted legally. All right, so hopefully that gives you an idea. Alrighty. Shane asked, how long will it take to approve your 485? Okay, so that's what I was wondering earlier. If because you didn't mention 485 before, I think. But how long will it take USCIS to approve your 485? Well, when did you file it? Did you file it with the I-130? When that happens, sometimes when the I-130 is approved, it can take, what's it called, about a couple days. And the next day, sometimes we've seen it on a case status online that the 45 will be approved the next day after the petition. I know it's strange. I think it's just done by different offices, so it's not necessarily approved the same day, which you would think. I mean, but that's just how slow the government is, even if it's one day later. So yeah, check your status online, okay? Veteran Deer, you entered USA illegally. So if you do have a marriage case, her have to leave the country. Her, I mean, I guess you mean your spouse, whoever is the foreign national for you, Verinder. Eventually, you need to have, the default is if you enter without a visa, yes, the foreign national, the immigrant, has to have the visa interview abroad. However, you want to file for a waiver before that, okay? Unlawful presence waiver. This is called a 601A waiver. So you can apply for this while you're still in the United States, okay? But if you're wondering, like, oh, I don't know if you were asking this, if the U.S. citizen or sponsor has to go abroad, no, there's no requirement, okay, for that. Amani, let me answer Amani's question. Can you do SI? Okay, I could do Khan's question. I'll do both. How to expedite I-45 asylum-based application. I don't know is it you that called in? I know my team asked me if I mentioned expedite, but as far as I know, there's no expedite process with USCIS for the 485. Because I've asked the USCIS rep before if that's possible, but I think it's only for 765 and I-130. Otherwise, it would be a free-for-all with USCIS, and I don't think they want that. Okay, so unfortunately, for your situation, Khan, is that you have to consider timing-wise, or you don't have to consider. I mean, we would do that. Just timing of when to file a mandamus lawsuit, okay, based on your situation. Right now, I believe it's taking at least 24 months for a residency application 45 based on asylee status, which is ridiculous. So that's why, for those who have not applied for it, but let's say you get approved for the asylee status or you get granted that status. That's great. They changed the policy earlier this year. You can go ahead and file the 45 ASAP. You don't have to wait a full year, but there is still a 1-year physical presence requirement. So you won't actually get approved until at least 12 months later. Amani, can you do SIJ, special immigrant juvenile visa status, by yourself, or do you need a guardian? You do need some sort of guardian to well, that's interesting. Yeah, you do need one because on a state level, you need to show that you have someone taking care of you essentially. Even though you probably don't need someone to take care of you, you can take care of yourself, but it's more of a legal requirement. Yeah, so the special immigrant juvenile. So if anyone's not aware of, there is a pathway to where you can get residency while in the U.S., but you have to show that you were either this is for people who are under 18. Okay, since in very few states it can be happen after under 20, when you're between 18 and 21 years old, but very few states. But anyway, you need to get a state court order, family court order, showing that you were either abandoned, neglected, or abused. Okay, to have that statement in there. Essentially, it's what we call a SAPSR in Texas, suit affecting parent-child relationship. In other states, could be called something else, but essentially like a child custody order. But for the more specific language, for the purpose of a special immigrant juvenile visa. Man, I realized I need to make a video about that. All right, and Anuette, Cam, and sorry, I'll just call you Ann because I don't want to mess up your name. Or I guess I already did. Came to US on B1, B2. You got married. You filed adjustment of status. Now you overstayed. Any penalty for that? There's no penalty as long as no financial penalty in general, but the consequence is it really depends what the status of your sponsor. So if your sponsor, meaning your spouse, is a U.S. citizen, there's no like consequence. Overstay is completely unlawful presence is waived. Okay, as long as you have legal entry, which you do. You mentioned B1, B2. Okay, folks, I'm going to answer 2 more questions. I really appreciate it. I got to head get ready for a team meeting right after this. Thank you so much for your time. Just a quick note here. We do offer a strategy session for 15 minutes, no cost to you. When you call in, you would have to talk to one of our CARES members. They're not attorneys. You're welcome to share your legal questions so that they can put it in the system. And so attorneys can be ready for you. Because again, our calls, our strategy session are only 15 minutes. If you do want more time, we offer it. It's 30 minutes or 1 hour, but you have to pay for it. Okay, so we definitely want to help point you on the right direction. In that sense, I'm not actually encouraging you to pay a fee. I know it's different than how we operate than other law firms. Okay, so anyways, Shane, can you give us a call? Sure, happy to do it. Go to greencardguys.com for our information online, or you can Google search Ting Law Group. Ting is my last name. Thank you for asking. And Shane, sounds like you, it's been 2 weeks for you now since 45. Hopefully it's all squared away for you, but happy to answer any more questions for you, okay? Let's see. What is 601A? I'll record a separate video about that, but I talk about it pretty often. It's an unlawful presence waiver, so stay tuned, okay? I won't be able to cover it in full right now, but it's for someone essentially who's overstayed their or entered illegally, okay, without a visa. All right, folks. Thank you so much. I see your question, Juliet, but I have to get going. Please stay tuned for our next live show. It just takes a hell of a long time. It's my short answer. All right, so stay tuned on the Visa Bulletin, and thank you so much. You all have a great day. By the way, give us a likes and on TikTok, tap the screen. I really appreciate it. All right, take care.